like you to try is I'd like you to go and get a partner. And what I want you to do with your partner is I want you to just pretend like you're from a temporary agency. Pull out your submodality list and to realize that this time there's not just one thing with submodalities, there may be a little bit of a sequence. And have them pick something which they consider gets in their way, some kind of a difficulty or something. Maybe they're shy, whatever it is. And what I want you to do is to simply, I don't want you to fix it. I want you to first learn that it works perfectly. Schizophrenics are schizophrenic every day. Catatonics can stay there until I come around. Smack them on the foot with a hammer or something. You know, I don't know why. I'll never forget years ago when I was in the mental hospital, walking down the hallway, talking to this guy. And I'm a little loud, so I'm making a lot of noise. As we come into this room, the guy goes, shh. And I said, what's the matter? He goes, he's catatonic. Now that's about the last person you should be able to bother. Say, I'm the kind of guy that goes out and gets a gas can, say. You empty all the gasoline out of it, you put water in it, right? You put a little perfume in it just to give it that odor. And you walk up to the catatonic and you start pouring it all over them. Right? You can watch the flicker in the eye like this, right? Then you step back and you light up a cigarette. Like this, and you look at them and you go, come to daddy. And they jump up and go, you're fucking crazy. You go, that's right. Now, see, because I always figure the first rule of communication is get attention. And this works. Now, in the case that you're going to deal with here, what I want you to do is to learn, not only when you're doing this, but when somebody's doing it with you, that what's going on here is that everything has been learned. That for those of you who procrastinate, it's an achievement. You have figured out the cleverest ways in the world to outwit yourself. And you can come up with them one right after another. That for those of you who have problems motivating yourself in the morning, for example, for those of you who have insomnia, that's a lot of work. I love insomniacs. They have to talk to themselves real fast all night long, really like this. They have to go, I'll never go to sleep. I'm not feeling tired. I don't know why I'm not feeling tired. Oh, if I don't go to sleep, I'll never be able to wake up in the morning. Good God. I just can't figure out what the hell's keeping me awake. Now, I found out that the way, you know what I do? I do what my insomniacs did when I'm having trouble waking up in the morning. I wake up in the morning and the sheets call to me. They go, Richard, we want you to stay here. We love you, Richard. We'll make you feel warm and nice. And I go, okay, sheets. And then suddenly another voice goes, better get out of bed because you have a workshop to do. And the sheets go, what's another workshop? Sometimes I even get up and go to the bathroom, but the sheets reach out and pull me back in bed. Then I remember my insomniacs. So very slowly I begin to speed up the tone of my voice, raise the pitch, and start to talk to them like they do. And God, I don't want to stay in bed anymore. But I don't found out with insomniacs, if you reverse the quiet yourself, go inside, and start talking to yourself at your normal pace. And then very slowly, I want you to start to slow down the rate of your speech. Maybe put in the order too. Make the tone lower and sleepier. The way it sounds when you wake up and you're a little groggy. And notice what begins to happen. As you do so, you don't feel quite as tense. You might want to sort of drift off a little bit. But you can always turn it around the other way just as well. Now, the thing is when you begin to think of it as an achievement, two things happen. Rather than it being a damn disorder that has to be treated, especially with drugs. Why waste drugs on mental problems? It seems like drugs should be given to politicians in abundance. Of course, it probably already is. From what I can tell. The thing is if you begin to think of things as an achievement, that people don't turn it around the other way, speed up the voice. That's right, you'll catch up here. Just think of the fact you're in the front row. Does the term kill them in the spirit mean anything to you? I don't know what your Midwest is like here, but our Midwest, we have what's really referred to as the Bible Belt. And we're the ones that have people like Jimmy Swaggart. I don't know if you guys got the news over here, but the evangelists have had a tough year. It's that whole thing, preachers and lay people, Well, America has really taken this one right to the limit, let me tell you, right up against the wall. Well, old old Jimmy Swaggart, see, and the ministers, they have a hypnotic technique they use called killing the spirit. That's where you walk up and smack somebody in the head, and they pass out for some reason. Can't imagine why. Good hypnotic technique, though. If people give you a bad time, stand them up and you smack them in the forehead, and you go, stiff, stiffer still, go to sleep. Praise God, be held. Give me your wallet. While you're at it, take your clothes off. Sort of the new religion. You're only doing this for God. I could just hear it coming out of his lips. He said, but God forgave me. I like that. The guy's got a direct line. He said, yes, I sinned. I feel terrible. I cried about it, but God forgave me, so you have to. Now give me your wallet. Again. Now, Jim Baker, I don't know if you heard about Jim Baker. He's the one that started all of this stuff. They were building a Christian amusement park. And I swear to God, the part that got me was when I saw the thing on the news about that they were interviewing this couple on the news about at Heritage USA. And one couple says, well, we got to go because Jesus walks on the water at 4 o'clock. And they swing across the camera, and here comes this guy dressed up as Jesus, water skiing down the river. And I said, religion has gone to an all-new low. I mean, talk about going for the bucks. Disneyland of religion? I don't think so. I think this. Every once in a while, people get just what they deserve. Plus or minus 2. Now, what I want you to do in this exercise is very simply, I don't want you to take something earth-shaking. Take something that bothers you, on a constant basis. Maybe you have trouble getting places on time. Maybe you're shy, because I know a lot of times people get all dressed up to go out. They dress up, they fix their hair, and they forget to change attitude. You ever notice that? So they go out to a public place, and I'm on the road a lot. I see these guys, they're in bars. They cross the room, and they see a beautiful woman over there. They say to themselves, she'll never like me. That always puts you in the right mood, And they get up, and they start to walk across the room, and gravity strikes. Just like this. And they start walking slower, and they start talking to themselves about all the shitty things that happen in life, and rejection. By the time they get over there, if they say anything, it sounds like this. That's if they make it. A lot of times, veer off at the last minute. Go, she would have rejected me anyway, the bitch. Now, the thing is that I've discovered it's just as important to work with the little things in life, because those are the things where you have the opportunity to build enough ecstasy that the rest of it can disappear. Especially when you begin to learn that anything that looked like something that got in your way, difficulty motivating yourself, say compulsive overeating, whatever it is, all of these things are things that you do actively. You've got to do something in your head. The big question is, how do you know when to start, and what makes the operation work? See, in many, many years ago, there was a guy named George Miller. And Miller figured out that brain functions operate the following way. There's a test that tells you when do you start. Because people aren't shy when they're sitting alone in their bedroom. They ain't shy with their friends. They ain't shy with their dog. They're shy when they have to meet new people. And the thing is so they have to be able to make a distinction. How do they know which people are new and which ones aren't? Do they get shy before they actually meet them, or when they run into them suddenly? Now, the next thing is that there has to be an operation. The operation itself has to be able to produce a series of pictures and sounds that create the feeling that you don't want. Now, as you go through this exercise, I want you to buzz through. You don't have to get in great detail. But what I want you to do at each step of the road, as you move through the operation phase, I want you to test it in yourself. I want you to try somebody else's way of understanding the world. They tell you, well, I really procrastinate with things. I always like to tell those people, well, then you should go second. You should go second. People will put it off, or they probably won't have time for it anyway. But as you do that, I want you to say, well, how do you think about time? Because, see, it's not enough to procrastinate to know when to procrastinate. You can't just procrastinate right off the bat. You have to procrastinate at the appropriate time. See, for example, people who are constantly late, they have to know when to leave, otherwise they'd show up on time. So if you begin to think of all of these little things being skills, it gives you the chance to try it. And I want you to try, the way to do it is literally, Every time they tell you something, go inside and do it yourself and see if you get the same feelings they do. If you don't, go back and ask some more questions, because maybe you don't have the picture's not big enough or small enough. Find out the size of images, where they're located, so you can begin to try on other people's internal states. I would recommend you, in this exercise, it doesn't matter who you choose as a partner. The more screwed up they are, the better example you'll get. So pick your partner well. That way the person who chooses you, you'll know what they think of you. Now, however, on the other side, I want you to think about the fact that if you can learn how somebody is shy or makes a mistake procrastinating or has a difficulty sleeping, then you'll also have the same skill that it takes to learn how a genius does what they do, how Moshe Feldenkrais thought, how writers like Vonnegut. Now, what I want you to do is to realize that what I'm suggesting here is a new way of beginning to play with your profession. That the grace and ease with which one person does something, you can learn how they learn. How many of you in here tried to learn to play an instrument and got frustrated and stopped? Right? Well, you know what? The way thinking about it made it so that it was frustrating. Whereas there are people that, there are people who learn who are frustrated and keep going, and there are people that just learn easily. I mean, think of all the idiots that can play guitar. It can't be that hard. I mean, if you look at musicians as a group of individuals, they don't really come out as being the most persevering individuals in the world. I mean, most of them have a glass in one hand and a joint in the other. And if they can learn, anybody can learn. I mean, most of these people's brains are tickled and they can still do it. So, but the thing is you've got to think of it as you have to find out what motivates them. Because just like you have a way of understanding, we all have a way of motivating ourselves. But if we have an appropriate way for each task, we begin to expand capability of using a brain. I came here yesterday and said, I want to teach you about using your brain. I wasn't just talking about getting control of it. I was talking about getting to use it in ways you never even dreamed of. You know somebody that's highly motivated, you can find out how they motivate themselves and motivate yourself that way. If you want to learn a sport, you want to learn to play golf, find somebody that just loves the game and find out how they do it. And you will too. You'll still have to learn to make the strokes, but at least you'll have the way. You'll find out how they learn from other people by watching. You'll find out nice acquisition strategy, because if you get a motivation strategy, an acquisition strategy, you will develop and excel in anything. Now, this is just kindergarten of learning to do it. Learning to have somebody's problem only gives you an example of learning to have other people's expertise. Probably something you're not interested in, unless you just want life to be fuller and better and more full of ecstasy and achievement and money. But for those of you who want to discover your real self, you wouldn't be interested in this unless you've had a good look at what it is. Because if you have, you'll discover what your real self is the opportunity you are a learning machine. First and foremost, from the moment even before you popped out of the womb. I discovered that children, sometimes you can talk to them while they're still in there. They're learning language. They're just learning machines. Everything is. You've watched your kids. But they learn to do good things and they learn bad habits. By your opinion. Now, the thing is that as you begin to look at life as an achievement, you have the opportunity to not only take people out of their difficulties, but to begin to acquire from other people all kinds of gifts. The world becomes like a huge smorgasbord. Only there's ways of learning this. It means that things that you thought were impossible suddenly will become simpler and simpler. Because probably for most of you, who sleep like a log, having insomnia would be a problem. Now you can have a way to stay awake a little longer. Hang out with your friends. And then when you want to, you can switch it off and go somewhere else. This is what I mean by using your brain. By having the flexibility to think like yourself, adopt other people's style of thinking. We have a calculus for this. We make them up just to find out what will happen. Some of them are real weird and some of them aren't. Now what I'd like you to do is I want you to, this time, just for the sake of learning, I want you to get into groups of 3 or 4. And I want you to take one person, and I want 3 or 4 of you to adopt however they do whatever their difficulty is. Okay? So you can all ask questions. See, because my policy is always gang up on the client. Okay? You notice how subtle I am with them. Go, do this or I'll hurt you. See, I always figure that I want it to be worse to come to me as a clinician than to have your problem. It's easier to give up your difficulty than it is to go for another session, both financially and physically. Because I don't want people to be dependent on me, mostly because I don't like them sticking out well. I don't want them hanging around until they get to the point where they're real entertaining. I want to be able to create people that I want to have lunch with. That's my goal. Now, the starting point for you is to just take your time and remember, time is the most important thing in this. You have to know when to do something that is a test. You have to know when to start it. You have to know what to do to get it going, and then you have to have an operation to know how to create the feelings. Pay attention to where internal sounds come from what direction, how loud they are. A lot of these weird things are motivated by voices. The tone of the voice, people have to demonstrate, they have a voice that has, "You're nothing, you're a shit, you won't be able to do that." Well, you go, that'll work. That'll make you feel like a creep. They have trouble walking up to people in public and being friendly, and they have a little voice that goes, "You better not do this. If you do this, they're going to think you're weird. They won't like you." And especially if the voice is coming from the front, so it blinds you. And then if you have a picture of people rejecting you, they'll laugh too. If you do things like that, this is how people end up mobilized in life, because they have all this garbage going on. Learn that you can put on the garbage and you'll feel as shitty as they will. But then you can move it away, and so can they. Take about 15 minutes, and I want you to do just 2 people in your group, even though there's 3 or 4. Not everybody has to do it. The important part is trying it on, not having the problem. You can always get rid of your problems. So take about 15 minutes apiece, break into groups of about 4, and for God's sake, enjoy yourself while you do this. Use your ecstasy anchor and use your motivation anchor. Through the years that I've been teaching, one of the things that I've always tried to do with students is to teach them to accelerate their learning. And I realize that what I've been doing is kind of pushing you rather quickly through this stuff. But I also want you to keep in mind that what I told you yesterday about going back and practicing the stuff in the exercises when you're not here is important. Because what I'm trying to do is to give you a sampling of the kinds of things that are on the forefront of NLP. The kinds of things that people are doing and a variety of contexts in which they're doing. That it's not like I have 12 days to sit down and rigorously teach you language patterns, but I do recommend that you go through things and learn things like the precision use of language, like it's put out in Patterns 1. The precision use of strategy elicitation is in Volume 1 of NLP. The reason I wrote all these books, above and beyond the fact I love royalties, is, which I thank you all for greatly. My dog thanks you too. I work for my dog. I don't know if you guys know that, but see, my dog stays home, lays around the yard. I come home, and he goes, "How about a meal? It's good to see you. We're hungry, though." No, I don't like that brand of kibble. I like this brand of kibble. My dog even has a nice big color TV, and most of the time I'm in a hotel room, so I figure I work for him. Now, what I like to do is I like to bring out something new now. And we're going to get back to some of the things we were doing and begin to combine them in interesting fashions this afternoon. But what I like to do is to bring up the notion of time. It strikes to me that above and beyond the thinking elements about submodalities and the sequences of submodalities that constitute strategies, such as the spelling strategy I told you about, the other thing that you always have to take into account is that subjectively as people, we have to have some sense of what's past and of the future and of the present. Now, we've discovered a fascinating thing in NLP about timelines, and this actually started years ago, and it confused me for a while, so I just stopped thinking about it. And then I came back to it later and started to really begin to find ways of making this useful. What we discovered, and it was really quite by accident, I began to have people, we were sort of fascinated by the accessing cues for a long time, and so I started trying to find out what information could you get from accessing cues. Well, we found out there's a set of information you don't get from accessing cues, but it provided a whole new ground to look at, and it's what we call timelines. And for those who are interested in this, there's actually a book called Timeline Therapy, which just has come out recently. It's probably not here yet because it's only been out for a month. It's written by a man named Tad James, and it's also published by Meta Publications. You can always call over there and tell them to send you one. Now, the thing about timelines is what happens is if you begin to ask people to think of something that was 5 years ago, and then 10 years ago, if you say, think of something that was 6 months ago, 8 months ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Well, if I stopped Jack, will you do this with me? Okay. Just come out here and sit here so they can kind of watch you. Sit down. And relax. Now, what I want you to do is just close your eyes for a minute, and I want you to stop and think of something that happened 6 months ago. And I want you to point to where the image is in your mind. Okay, where the image comes from. Just think of something quick, 6 months ago. Where is it? Okay, now I want you to pick something that was like 2 or 3 years ago. Pick a something. Today. A couple years ago. Where is that? Point. Okay. Is it further off in the distance? Or is it, where is it? Okay, let's pick something that was... Okay. How about something that was 10 years ago? Okay. Now, what I want you to begin to do is now pick something that was like 20 years ago. Right in front of you. Now, if you pick something that was yesterday, okay, and then think of something that you might do a year from now. No difference in location here. I always love it when when I first started teaching psychologists this, they were the people that were supposed to be the masters of objective observation. How did they miss this stuff? I mean, it's, you know how they missed it? They weren't methodical. They didn't stop and ask questions like I'm asking now, so that people would just kind of show you. And see, especially when I've been teaching audiences, when you ask audiences, you have whole groups moving. You ask a whole group to think of, make a picture of a giraffe with a rhinoceros's head. That's a constructed image. And everybody goes like this, it sort of makes it more obvious. Now, what I want you to do, Jack, is take now, and I want you to take the furthest point back in the past that you thought of, and draw a line with your finger up to the future. So that if you just kind of draw a line as time progresses with your finger. Try, kind of draw it in the sky there. From one image to the other. Yeah, from one to the other. Okay, now, you can open your eyes now. Now, what you begin to get is that, literally, people have a timeline. So that they know, where the past is and where the future will be. Now, surprisingly enough, there ends up being some real things that come out of timelines. Some people's timeline runs straight across this way, like Jack's. Now, this gives you the ability to look at your life. Now, we refer to these people as people who have the ability to make judgment. They're called judgers in timeline work. It's not a bad term that doesn't mean anything bad, it's just the name of it. Judgers have the ability to look at this. Some people's timeline runs so that the past is behind them and the future is in the front. We find this to be extremely prevalent among junkies. Because junkies don't see that they're mistakes that they made, because they're behind them. So they don't think they're going to make the same mistakes again. We also find that this same strategy seems to be highly prevalent among musicians that are extremely talented. Now, I don't know if there's a correlation there or not, but the one thing is they're people that are really in time. They're right in the present right now, because their present is where they are. The past is behind them and the future is in the front. Now, most people's timeline seems to be fairly fixed. Now, you do find some interesting ones, because some people have it like a pair of cattle horns, so that it goes off, sort of lops off this way and lops off that way. As you begin to discover where your timeline is, You then get the ability to begin to do things with it, because you can actually move it, you can change it. We found out that when we were trying to get people to really reorganize their life was in shambles, that one of the things that we needed to do is to get them to take their timeline, put it out in front of them, so that they could take a look at it and see what was there, so they didn't start making the same mistakes again. But also, there's the ability to begin to now take your timeline and go back on your timeline and change things in your past. For example, if you could stop and think, Jack, if there are any decisions you made when you were younger about your life that they get in your way, decisions about how smart you were or lovable, anything, you don't have to tell us what it is, just think of one. This again is secret therapy. Good. Now, what I want you to do is the following. I want you to just close your eyes for a minute. What I want you to do is to float up above your timeline so you can literally look down at it from the top, looking down. All right? Once you've oriented yourself up there, I want you to begin to float back along your timeline, way back to just before you made that decision. So you get back younger than where the decision existed. When you get there, just nod so I know you're there. Yeah, float above. You stay above. I'll tell you when to get down there. Now, once you get back there, what I want you to do is stay above the timeline. And what I want you to do is to construct for yourself a decision that you would rather have made. Something that would be more practical, more useful, and make you more content as a human being. Just think of what it would be. Okay. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to float down into your timeline, and when you get down before the decision you don't like, float down in and literally make that decision. Knowing what you know now, create a new experience for yourself. A solid decision that that's the way you're going to live your life. You feel this? Good. Now, what I want you to do is to stay inside your timeline, and I want you to shoot forward in it. And as you do, you're going to go right through that old experience, and it's going to blow it right apart. You go all the way forward, and when you come out the end of your timeline in the present, what I want you to do is then to float back and put your timeline back up where it belongs. How do you do that? Just float forward. It's kind of like being in a tunnel.
I'm back here.
Oh, you're there. All right, now I want you to move your timeline so that it's back up in front of you the way it was when we started. Okay? I always want to put things back in their place. Okay, once you get it up there, then I want you to slowly open your eyes and reorient for a minute. Okay. Then I want you to go back in your timeline and check the new decision you made. Does it feel like it's real? Sure. It's the kind of change I like. I like it when people go, yeah, ain't no problem. It beats having them cry and beat up pillows and furniture and stuff, especially if it's your furniture. It's one of the things I never got into about Gestalt therapy is people come over and start eyeing your furniture. Nice chair you got there. How tough is it? Now, the thing is what this technique is called the decision destroyer. Many of us make useless decisions. Now, they may even be useful at the time, but they're not useful for us now. And they begin to limit our behavior. Now, if you stop and go back and think about the old decision that you have, the one that got in your way, what does it seem like now? Stupid? Do you feel like you have to live that way? Okay. It's another long piece of therapy, huh? Now, the thing is when you begin to learn your brain, now see, Jack not only has a new decision in his life, but he has a way of making all the ones he wants to. Now, we're going to do a technique a little bit later this afternoon that makes this like ground in stone. I mean, there's a way of making it so that the new decisions are so powerful they're ridiculous. Thank you, Jack. You can go sit down. Now, the thing that I'd like you to be able to do is I want you to take the time to go ahead and try the same technique you just watched me do.